Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Hey, welcome back to Evil's Comics, and I got another comic chat for you. This one's kind of maybe gonna rub some people the wrong way, but if you can't tell, this is a Star Wars themed comic chat, and let's get into it. So, okay, I want to point some things out, and it's just kind of like how things are presented and how we as people just accept them, right? Alright, so Star Wars, and I'm specifically talking about episodes 4, 5, and 6, the main meat of the Star Wars mythos. Now, me as a Star Wars fan, I love all Star Wars, episode 1, 2, 3. I love 4, 5, 6, and then of course we have 7, 8, and 9. I love all Star Wars. Any Star Wars to me is good Star Wars. Ewoks, I eat that crap up. Christmas special, watched it like 20 times. It's not one of my favorite things, but Mandalorian, Rebels, I mean there are a lot of good and a lot of different things in Star Wars. I just love the lore, the characters. I mean, it was one of the first genres, and for those that don't know, it is not science fiction. That is not the genre that Star Wars is in. It is specifically created as one of its own, just like most people know about the Dollar Trilogy or The Man with No Name or The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. Those are spaghetti westerns. They are not westerns. There is a difference. Star Wars is a space opera, and that's what it was created as, and there are several different movies and books now in that genre, but Star Wars was always set as a space opera, as George Lucas put it. I want to point out that we just accept things that are presented in front of us, and we don't really question it. I would like to go into my first case, and that's Luke Skywalker. If you go back to A New Hope, how do we know that that's his name? I mean, who says it in the movie besides Luke himself? I mean, he was an orphan child, right? The logic behind it, especially when you get to episodes 1, 2, and 3, make absolutely no sense, right? I mean, you have this boy, and his name is Luke Skywalker, right? And previously, like, 30 years or 20 years before that, you had this villain, Anakin Skywalker, that turned into Darth Vader. Now, in the movies, we know that they don't know that that's Anakin that turned into Darth, but the Jedi do. Obi-Wan did, he does, they of course not right there, but, I mean, it wasn't just the good guys looking for Skywalker. It was bad guys. I mean, Skywalker was you're talking about one of the biggest generals in the Clone Wars and the movies and the cartoons and everything that was tied into the Clone Wars. They kind of showed us that Anakin and Obi-Wan were all over the place, and everywhere Anakin was, he was like the shit, right? I mean, so like his name was kind of well established, right? Skywalker. And it's not like we meet a lot of Skywalkers in the Star Wars mythos, right? I mean, I only know, movie form, and it's really just, Shmi, Anakin, Luke, Leia. I don't think Leia ever gets the Skywalker title, but you know what I'm saying, right? So, I mean, that's kind of my point right there. Like, how obvious was it that yes, they put them on this back-end world, but we do see that people that intermingle with the Empire all the time, and stormtroopers are there, so it's not that far off the beaten path. But I mean, his name is Luke Skywalker. He was applying to the Imperial Academy, remember? I mean, it's like one of the first opening scenes of A New Hope. Like, what, the Empires didn't have that name on their database? Like, I mean, what kind of genius is Obi-Wan Kenobi if he's the one that allowed Luke to keep his, last name being Skywalker and it being one of the more, okay. So that's my problem number one is Skywalker in general. Whose greatest idea was to, and granted, episodes 1, 2, and 3 are the backstory, that we got later on, almost 20 years after Star Wars. So, 20 years, and that's the I mean, my first problem. And give me, I love episode 1, 2, and 3. Grievous, Maul, Tyrannus. Most of those have my favorite villains in them. I'm a huge Darth Maul fan. But there's some other problems. You know, it's one of the only movies where we really root for the bad guys. And what bad guys? I'm not talking about the villains. You know, I hate calling these guys the villains, because when you really think about it, these guys might be the good guys, right? Because the movie starts out, right, and we meet, you know, Luke, and you could say he's the one good guy. I mean, and we'll get in. I mean, Luke kind of stays good. I mean, and that's why he goes into the whole hiding thing. I imagine it. You know, he kind of felt bad about what they were doing. But I mean, the movie starts out, it's titled Star Wars, right? And it's about war, and there's never a good side to war. I mean, both sides are bad. They're both fighting. They're both killing. Oh, over what? Land, you know, titles, money. Well, but you know, we're fallen rebels, right? And they're trying to overthrow this government, and granted, yes, I mean, it's presented to us that this government is bad. Now, the story, you know, the main meat of the movie does very little to show you why the you know, the government is that bad that it needs to be overthrown. We just accept it as the viewers that, yep, that's the story's telling us. But on another note, the heroes are all like bad individuals themselves, and each individual, minus maybe Luke, because he's kind of just picked up along the way. Obi-Wan, I mean, we go into it, and I mean, it either goes either way. Either he was lying his ass off to Luke in the beginning about the whole not knowing who his father was and yada yada yada. We know that stretch of it. But think about it the other way. Maybe he wasn't lying, and he really did think that Anakin was dead, and Darth Vader to him was a whole different other person. So it kind of paints a whole nother situation, like why even give him the title Skywalker, and that kind of, yeah, I'll get into that in a second. Okay, so you got Obi-Wan, right? And I mean, technically, he's, you know, he is a, what would you call it? He's a, you know, on the run. You know, the government wants all Jedi, and not only that, they want all, they're enemies of the state. So, I mean, if you're looking at it at a legal standpoint, you know, and somebody walked up to you and he had papers for murder, I mean, until he's proven guilty, he's still got those papers, right? So, I mean, technically, Obi-Wan's like an enemy of the state. And you get to Han Solo, and he is, I mean, numerous times he tells us that he's a spice runner. And once you get into the mythos of Star Wars, spice is a lot of different things. But the main thing that they run it for is because it's a drug. You know, Jabba the Hutt, he didn't look like Jeff Bezos running Amazon. He looked like, you know, that guy down the block running the trap house. You know what I'm saying? He didn't look like a respectable businessman. Neither did his clientele hanging around Jabba's palace. So, I mean, and Han Solo, like, specifically states a bunch of times that he smuggled, like, people and other things. Not only that, but you go into the whole story about the Millennium Falcon and how he achieved that. And it basically was, like, stolen in a legal card game. You know, and then we get to Leia, you can be like, oh, Leia's the good one. I mean, are you watching the same movie? Because technically she's kind of like in Obi-Wan's thing. She's like a enemy of the state. That's why, like, that's why Vader's after her in the very first scene, because she has stolen information from the said government or empire. You know, she didn't specifically steal it. She had spies to do it, you know. We're talking about you know, she's supposed to be a princess. She's also supposed to be like a governor on the Senate, and I mean the movie's after her, right? The story, the progression of the first movie, is Vader is after her because she hasn't come in contact with stolen plans, you know, and I mean, I don't know about you, but in real life, you know, I mean, if that came into your hands, what do? You run off and go give it to some guerrilla, you know, like a guerrilla terrorist or something, or do you go turn it over to your boss? You know, most of us will go turn it over to our boss and be like, I don't know how I came across this, but I don't think I'm supposed to have this kind of thing. So, I mean, is Leia really a good guy? I don't really think so, because, I mean, she was going against said government. You know, she was using her position to kind of spy on said government to go against it. I mean, we do see further on that, you know, her ties are eventually cut off as a governor, but I mean, if you follow any kind of the non-canon or canon comics or stories, she's still weaving in and out as a governess, and she's still in the Senate even when the Republic takes over and when the Empire comes back. I mean Lando, I mean he's the same boat as Han. You could say Chewie. Chewie might be a good guy, and yes, in the first movie, I mean he's the only one that like didn't get a medal, and he should have. But I mean, like, you could say, like, I mean, you could get detailed in their murders and stuff like that, and that's why, I want to pull Luke into, because he just jumps into it all willy-nilly without even thinking, and actually, I mean, he sees, like, firsthand everything, they're running from the government, it's very vague on why and what, and he's just like, yeah, I want to be a space knight, let's do it. Okay, so then we get to, like, Vader, right? And I mean, watch it as a kid, right? This is all my adult thinking, just kind of some of the logic that goes into this. And I'm not trying. I love Star Wars. I still love it to this day. I saw, like, I mean, the last Star Wars, I saw it 9 times in the theater because it was the 9th movie, and I did that with the 8th and the 7th and so on and forth. And the first movies I've seen millions of times. And guess what? Episode 1, 2, and 3. I love Episode 1. It's one of my favorite ones. There are parts of Episode 2 and 3. I love, man, any more Boba, I'll take some Django. Okay, so Vader. I mean, it's this whole, like, redemption story arc, right? But is it really? I mean, we know that he wasn't the prophesized person. And now, that's where it gets weird, because episodes like 7, 8, 9, I don't think there was, like, this main set story. I think everybody got involved, and the story kind of just, woo! But we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and right, like Vader, it's supposed to be this redemption thing where Luke brought him back to the light, and we saw his Force ghost, and yeah, but does it really happen? I mean, are y'all not paying attention to the movie, right? I mean, you got the rule of 2, right? And what a Sith does, and what a Sith is about, and they even in the movie, every time we hear from the villains, it's always like this. It's not the picture you see. You're being told different things. You can't really get the whole picture unless you learn both sides of the story, kind of thing. But Vader, and specifically, right? I mean, he does everything a Sith is set out to do. I mean, like, yes, he tells Luke he's his father. That's kind of one of the weird things that we accept as viewers, that Luke is Vader's son. And yes, we do see in Episode 3 that, I mean, but there's a lot of the movie we don't see. I mean, like, a kid can be, switched out. I mean, we're talking about Vader is pegged as one of the most all-time, well-known villains ever, and is he really a villain? I mean, he does kill, yes. I mean, he's in the government. I mean, and yes, in war, soldiers, they kill. Are they really villains? Not necessarily. I think it depends on their actions and what they're told to do versus what they just want to do. Of course, I do not condone any of that, and we're talking about mythical and fantasy, right? But I mean, you talk about that scene, and all of us have that, Luke, I'm your father. He doesn't say that, and I mean, I think it's weird that Vader never makes the connection that he's a Skywalker, and that's his previous name. If anybody would remember that he was Anakin, it would be him, right? And we have current comics of Vader going back and remembering, Palpatine, and Padme, but he didn't realize the one guy with his name that applied to an Imperial Academy that was going to be an Imperial officer with the same name as Skywalker. Not only that, but it's just like left up to you that, I mean, there's no real evidence shown in the movies that it is his son. Besides Episode 3, we saw the toddlers taken in separate ways, and yes, Leia goes that way and Luke goes this way. But technically in the movie, like, they just keep calling him Luke and Skywalker, but I mean, like, we don't definitely know that that's his son, especially if, like, Vader doesn't even remember the name Skywalker. Okay, so a little off subject, but going back to the rule of 2, right? Well, I mean, the rule of 2 means that only two Sith can exist. And eventually the plan is there's a master and apprentice, and the only way the apprentice can become the master is to kill the master, right? I mean, Sith are supposed to be this evil, and that's why they created the rule of 2, because Sith were getting crazy. But I mean, didn't Vader do just that? I mean, he does kill the Emperor. I mean, with his own hands. It wasn't Luke, like he slashed him down and then Vader grabbed. Nope. Vader picked that mofo up and threw him over the thing. And at that point in the story, that was the end of Palpatine, right? And yeah, we do get that whole like human scene where Vader was dying. But that's my point. He was dying. I mean, he took a lot of damage to picking up Palpatine and stuff. But, I mean, up until that point, if you go back and you watch everything, I mean, was there ever this you know, before that moment of the humanized of Vader taking off the helmet and be like, son, I see you with my own eyes. Like, I mean, was there ever a time where Vader looked like he was going to the light side? He was making the transitions? Or is just, as the movie playing points it out there, that Vader was always on this track to not only betray Luke, even if Luke would have taken the dumb, you know, thing on, join me, we can overthrow the Emperor and we can rule the galaxy together. You know, if you listen to the definition of the Sith, that he was lying in general. You know, that it wasn't a possibility that Vader and Luke were ever gonna rule the galaxy together. But, I mean, we just accept because he took his helmet off and we saw that it was an old-ass man under the helmet that all of a sudden he forgave all his sins and it's this redemption thing. And I don't think that's what the movie's showing us. I think he's still tricking the hell out of Luke. Now, the Force Ghost, I think that's Anakin. I mean, there's numerous times, and if Obi-Wan wasn't lying and he was telling the truth, then that means Anakin did die. And Vader is a completely different entity. I mean, we've seen these two different entities. You got good Jedi Anakin and you got Vader. And then again, it goes into the whole morality of Vader and being a villain. Is he really a villain? He's just doing what he's told. I mean, there's never a time where, I mean, besides him killing the Emperor, and honestly, I mean, the Emperor was bad, but I mean, up until that, he was just doing what he was told. Now, he does get like forceful and he does choke and he has the temper tantrums. So, yeah, maybe villain. But, I mean, other than that, he's doing all the military stuff. I mean, but these are just some thoughts. I don't know. Like, honestly, I believe, like, in the end, if Vader wouldn't have been hurt, would he have gone good? I mean, honestly, I think if Vader wouldn't have got hurt and the Death Star wouldn't have blown up, I think Vader would have kept going bad. I mean, do you honestly believe he just all of a sudden, like, in that one good moment, and the movie did not show us anything before then that he was going to change his ways. I mean, he kept doing everything that Palpatine wanted him to do up until that point. But we as the viewers were just like, yeah, he went good. Oh, I'm so glad him and his son could connect. And I don't know, but these are my Star Wars thoughts. You know, I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there, and I'm looking at you, Sith, and I'm not trying to offend anybody. I just, you know, maybe look at things a different way. You know, I mean, it's like them saying Die Hard's a Christmas movie. You know, I don't know. Maybe the heroes that we were supposed to be rooting for are these guys. You know, I've heard him being called a villain before. Yeah, I don't ever remember in any of the stories him betraying anybody or backstabbing anybody or lying to anybody or murdering anybody that didn't try to murder him first. Or, I mean, what's the definition of a villain now? Is it just somebody in a costume that looks mean? You know, does my name, Evil Mike, does it guarantee that I'm a villain because I took up the monitor with evil in the beginning? Food for thought, right? Alright guys, that's what I got. Love y'all. Like, comment, subscribe. Please comment. Let me hear your thoughts. Evil out.